It's the party of the year for Australia's queer community, and it attracts tens of thousands of people to Sydney. This pink extravaganza is the Mardi Gras, and everyone from community members to corporations show up in solidarity with queer folk. But despite all this love, there's one group that isn't welcomed by everyone at the Pride Parade.
New South Wales police forces shine with pride.
We all hate cops! We all hate cops!
This is a counter-march organised by the queer community on the same day as the official event. The difference is there are no police marching here. Cops are not invited to this march, but that doesn't mean they don't show up.
We're here! We're queer! We're fabulous! Don't fuck with us! Get those animals off those horses! Get those animals off those horses!
Marchers like Jamie Jackson-Reid are boycotting the official Mardi Gras to protest alleged police brutality against their community. Are there issues between the police and the queer community? Like, even today, Sydney's a pretty queer-friendly city.
Let's just say my best friend recently got assaulted for being trans, and it's still happening. I just want, justice for anyone that's been mistreated by police. I'm a victim of it. My friend's a victim of it.
What happened to you?
I was mishandled by a police officer to the point of brutality, to the point of bloodshed, to the point of trauma that went through my life for years and years. And, I had to learn to deal with that at the hands of someone that's supposed to be protecting me.
This is Jackson-Reid in 2013, just before he went to his first Mardi Gras. And this is what happened hours later.
Can you tell me what happened?
This one here smashed him, grabbed him by the throat and smashed his skull on the pavement.
A police officer accused him of harassing a woman at the Pride Parade. But even when she denied this, he was violently arrested.
No, we just saw you whack his head against the ground. His blood is on the ground because of you, and then you punched him. You're a piece of shit.
Just make sure you get their badge numbers, because they're all involved. Did you get the photo? Make sure. Do you know him? Do you know him?
I've got no idea who this guy is.
That's just ridiculous.
Do what they say.
Just only do anything wrong.
It's really hard for me to watch this. I literally haven't watched it since 2013.
What were you expecting to happen that night when you went to the Mardi Gras?
I was just really excited to, celebrate myself and kind of just like meet new people. If they didn't film this, I don't know where my life would be now, because he put these 3 charges onto me, and
He charged you with assaulting him.
Yeah.
Jackson-Reid took the New South Wales Police to court and eventually agreed to a settlement. The officer appealed an internal inquiry, which ruled he had used unreasonable force before resigning. This case is just one incident in the troubling history between the police and Sydney's queer community, dating back to the very first Mardi Gras in 1978. It started as a peaceful march, but police responded by violently cracking down.
Stop police attacks!
More than 50 protesters were unlawfully arrested, with scuffles between police and activists continuing outside court.
This is not an isolated incident. Police from Darlinghurst Police Station very regularly attack gay people in our gay community up in Oxford Street and William Street. It's a very, very common occurrence.
Give me a G! G! A! Y!
But it wasn't just the police that the queer community feared. In the 80s, bodies of gay men were turning up along Sydney's coastline. Many were murdered, but police failed to properly investigate, dismissing the cases as suicides or accidents.
You were fear of being attacked, and then you were afraid of going to the police about it for having your lifestyle attacked by the police.
Barry Charles was a young activist at this time and remembers being repeatedly assaulted in hate crimes.
There were always gangs of youths hanging around at any places where gay men congregated and just go out just basically to bash you. And of course, in some cases, and especially around here, there were cases of people being thrown off the cliffs.
Why were these young people going around attacking gay men?
The society told them that we were evil and perverts. They had no clear understanding of the difference between homosexuality and pedophilia and things like that.
Did you guys ever report these attacks to the police?
No, you couldn't. You couldn't. The police were on their side in many ways because they hated us just as much as any of these youths did. And of course, then there's the Scott Johnson case, which has only just been solved after nearly 30 years.
Scott Johnson was a brilliant American mathematician studying in Australia. In 1988, his body was found off cliffs in Sydney. The New South Wales police quickly closed the case as a suicide, but for more than 3 decades, his family in Boston lobbied to have it investigated as a homicide. In May, after 34 years, a man was finally convicted of Johnson's murder.
I said to him, I pushed the bloke, you went over the edge.
It took 3 separate inquests, almost $1.4 million in reward money, and a tireless campaign by Johnson's family.
I have a long list of people to thank for making today happen, that the killer is in jail and he'll be spending a good while in jail. We didn't get compensation for Scott this week, but what Scott got was dignity.
The police have apologised for the delay in resolving the case. But Johnson is just one of at least 88 gay men who were potentially killed in hate crimes in Sydney between 1970 and 2010. Some of the perpetrators are still free because, according to a report from Parliament, the police were indifferent. Mark Higginbotham was a veteran in the police force and says homophobia was rife when he started his career in Sydney in the 1980s. He says he saw his fellow officers attack men they found in gay meeting spots.
There were yells of fear and yells and sounds of violence and clear memories for me of combat, physical combat.
And this was essentially police just beating?
Bludgeoning gay men. So there's a particular event which is a very, very angry memory for me. And we were walking into the station and a badly injured man was heading to the station door, and I asked him what was wrong, and he told me he'd been attacked and beaten. It was obvious he was a gay man. I immediately thought, oh, that's probably a gay bashing. He identified the man from others. It was good evidence, admissible evidence.
So when you booked a person who'd clearly beaten up a gay man just minutes earlier, what was the response from the other police, the office?
So they started processing it, and I suddenly became aware of the presence of a furiously angry sergeant who I knew him and was screaming messages that included, "We don't charge poof-to-bashers," his words, abusing me for doing it. That was excuse enough for people to refuse to work with me, so I was tainted.
Do you think the department has actually done the work it needs to address this pretty dark history?
I am sitting talking to you because I saw a printed finding that there was no evidence of homophobic treatment of gay men in Sydney by New South Wales Police. I dispute that, and I do not want that to stand as the public record. The people who are victims of that deserve validation.
In April, the New South Wales government announced a new inquiry into the murders of queer men between 1970 and 2010. We reached out to the state's police commissioner twice for an interview, but the force ignored and then declined our request. After his assault in 2013, Jackson Reed believes discrimination within the police force remains an issue today.
I've never actually really experienced any sort of homophobia or feeling like I'm not equal. This was like the first major homophobia moment of my life.
And it was with a police officer?
Yeah, the people that are supposed to, protect and serve us. I wanted to do so many things, and then when this happened to me, it just destroyed my confidence. I didn't pursue anything. I just kind of stayed in my bubble of, trauma. I know there are police officers that definitely support gay people, but I do think we have a long way to go.
David Shoebridge has just been elected to the Senate in Australia's Parliament. But when we spoke to him in March, he was still an MP here in New South Wales. One of his key concerns was police accountability. How powerful is the police force in New South Wales, do you think?
Well, sometimes you think, maybe it's the Parliament that's the most powerful political player in New South Wales, maybe it's the media. But I would say the New South Wales Police Force, their union, the Police Association, would have to be one of the most politically powerful players in New South Wales. And, politicians are scared to take on the police.
When there's a complaint against the police, who investigates that complaint?
99 times out of 100, it's police investigating police. And that's one of the reasons why many people aren't willing to put forward a complaint. Because they've just been, had a terrible exchange with the police. Maybe they were physically assaulted, maybe they were falsely imprisoned. And for them then to go to the very same body and say, hey, I've got a complaint, will you investigate it? You can see how that just turns many people off.
Do you have a ballpark figure even of how much money they're paying out to people that are taking out civil claims against them?
Oh, it would be well north of $100 million a year, but it's hard to know the exact amount that they're paying because almost always the police pay for silence. So if there's a civil claim made against the police, they'll settle the case, but they'll settle the case and they will pay for a deed of release that silences the complainant and prevents that information coming into the public domain. When you ask them for the information just about how much they've paid in damages in a given year, how much did you pay to citizens of the state who you assaulted, falsely imprisoned, or otherwise, abused the rights of? And they'll say, oh, we don't keep the data. They don't know because they don't want to know because they don't want to change.
I'm Michael Learmonth, Editor-in-Chief of Vice News. Too often, traditional news outlets shy away from the real stories and experiences of those living through global conflicts. Not Vice News. Our reporters are on the ground, fearlessly covering the human stories that shape our world. You and millions of others can continue to read, watch, and listen to Vice News for free. But we hope you'll consider making a one-time or ongoing contribution of any size at vice.com/contribute. Every contribution, no matter how big or small, helps support the journalism Vice News brings to you every day. Thank you.